Hello everyone, I'm Carmen, one of the 3D modelers here at Firestorm Studios, and we will be continuing our environment. We will also be taking a slight detour. So on Tuesday, I had somebody request um, how to do greeble placement. Now, let me actually show what a greeble is, because I admit I had to Google this. So let's do sci-fi just to narrow it down a little bit. But bottom line, it's these bits and pieces. So we'll be going over how you could go about placing them. Now, of course, it really depends on what you're trying to create, how you're trying to create it, what your base is, all of that. But bottom line is that'll be something we'll be visiting today. Of course, we'll also be continuing with the actual environment. There's a lot that can be done with variables. It's just not applicable to this specific project. So due to that, yes, we're gonna visit it. We're gonna look at it and go from there. But also, it's slightly off track. So we'll be basically working on two projects today because, well, why not? What more can I say? You guys will also notice there's no music today. We have had a lot of trouble with copyright strikes. And also my internet is terrible today. But yeah, bottom line is we had a lot of issues with copyright strike. Due to that, we need to find music that's copyright free. Now I have found some, but not enough to cover the stream, so I'll fix that before our next stream. Actually, let me make a note of that. Fix music. Just due to the fact that, well, it's not a good thing when things get copyright strike. What else can I say? Let's just say fix music. Right. Now, having said all of that, let's get right into things. So first things first, we've lost, well, actually been working on the main house, so to speak. We've added roof tiles. I've messed a lot with this house and I've tried and failed to scale and rotate the roof tiles in a way that suits me. So due to that, we are, well, quite frankly, not going to mess with that because in the last two streams, I've probably spent around about 2 hours on that, and quite frankly, that's going to be boring to watch and boring to work on. So due to that, I'm going to be pivoting away from that. We could potentially add the roof tiles to the other houses, but just due to the fact that it's not completed and it's not to the standard I wanted. I don't want to copy it over to the other ones. Once it's at a standard where I like it and I think it's good, I will pivot back and we can take a look at what? We can take a look at refining further and copying it across all of the, what do you call it? All of the other houses. Right. So along with the houses themselves, we've obviously got other things we want to create. One of them being a lantern, which we did on Tuesday. We may, by we, I mean I, might want to refine it. I'm not quite sure I like that this line goes all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom. So we might revisit that, but let's also take a look at what else we still need to create. Get my PR file. Right. Quick disclaimer, AI concepts are bad. These are terrible. There's a reason why I'm not creating a one-to-one to them. They are just inspiration. We are using them as references, not as concepts. Disclaimer over and done with. Right. So we've got a rough overview of what I wanted to create. I wanted stairs, which I have to some extent. The stairs are already connected to the houses, which is that what we want? I'm not sure, but that's how I've done it up till this point. So we're going to leave that as it is. And then, so let's go over what's completed. Let's start there. I have completed the stairs. Is this connected? Why is that connected? It's annoying. That's terrible. Okay, but anyway, we've completed the small square building. Can I split this out? There we go. So I've completed these two. The stairs, the small square building. I've also completed the tower. No, I lie. I lie. I've not completed the tower. The reason being, it's one of those areas that I've gotten stuck with as well. And I haven't had time to find a solution for it. But bottom line is, I want to be able to have these different segments copy and still be editable. So I want them to copy up. I want them to scale accordingly. In other words, I do want them to go smaller towards the top. I want them to stack because if we look at the network itself, we've got different segments. This is the bottom segment, then this would be the top segment on top of that, and then the next one would be this one, and then the last one would be the one with the pillars in the roof. I'm still in two minds about how to achieve that. It's something I've seen done. It's not something that was demonstrated. In other words, the final output was demonstrated, but the actual process of getting there was not, which has made this more difficult to figure out. But bottom line is that is something we will be visiting at some point. Basically, once I've figured it out, we can go from there. I've also realized my Wi-Fi is absolutely terrible. I mean, I knew it was bad. I didn't realize it was this bad. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry about the Wi-Fi. Wait, let me see what I can do about that. Let's go to settings. I might have to drop the bitrate. We can see if it helps. It might help. It might not. But okay, let's see. Let me know. If it helps, great. If it doesn't, well, tough. And not much I can do about it. Usually I test my Wi-Fi before I stream. In this case, I did not, which was probably a mistake. Because Wi-Fi is interesting thing when you've got weather, which we unfortunately do. Right, so focusing for half a second because I've just rambled for 10 minutes. We are quick choice. Are we going to start with the actual environment or are we starting with agreeables? I think we're starting with agreeables. Not sure if Mano has joined yet, but he's the one that requested this. So we are going to start with the geonode, per usual. Now, this could be used on my environment as well, but my environment has not been created in a way that counts in counts in its favor. In other words, my environment was not built with agreeables in mind. Let's put it that way. Right, so we've got our geometry node. Everything else is hidden, just so we don't have a cluttered mess to deal with. Now, the first thing you need is something to copy onto. So for that, that'll be a cube, right? We're going to keep it relatively simple, just due to the fact that it saves a little bit of time. Right, so we've got that. I'm going to scale this up by a lot, not that much. Let's try 5. And the reason I want to scale it up is I do not have agreeables, at least not on demand. I can make them, but I have not made them. So due to that, how do I put it? How do I put it? It's just outside of the scope of this, basically. Let's put it that way. It's a bit outside of the scope. Main priority is actually getting something to place them, right? And that was what the request was for. Now, in terms of the actual placement of it, it's not a difficult process. There's just a couple of steps, and I'll explain them as I go along. But it's a fun thing to know. It's a fun thing to know. But yeah, bottom line is we're going to get our base. Now, I know he's got a sci-fi environment, so that makes it easier. Anything sci-fi is generally, in my mind, easier because it's you're often dealing with, how to put it, repetition. There's a lot of repetition in them. Um, so yeah. Okay, right. Set view, front view board. I just want to see it from the front view world. It makes it a little bit easier to figure things out. Right, so the capture direction is going to be up, and then in terms of the actual taper, let's just see what direction it's currently going. Okay, that's fine. That is fine. I might want to scale this. Let's scale it in width. Let's do times 2. Oh, we can work with rectangle. So let's work with rectangle. Right. Argument's sake, this is our house. Sci-fi thingamajig. Is it refined? No, but it does the job. Alright, then we can add a bevel. So the poly bevel is going to get plopped into there, and this isn't mandatory, it's just to add a little bit of interest and make it a little bit more refined. Again, this is just a base to work with. Yeah, that's about it. Right, so we've got our, let's say, building. Does it need to be this shape? No, but it's a fun shape, so we're doing with it, and it's going to really demonstrate how the greebles follow the contours of the actual building. Now, what they don't do is they don't deform. They do stay flat. So in other words, if you've got a cylindrical shape, it's not going to bend the individual greebles around it, so to speak. So it's not an envelope effect, but it does follow the normal direction, so to speak. Right. So that's that. And then for our greebles themselves, now I'm going to play with this a little bit. I have cheapest viewers. Really? Can I block you? We've got a bot in the chat. We've got a bot in the chat. How do I get rid of a bot? Right. I do not have permission to get rid of bots, and unfortunately all our moderators is how do I put it? They're asleep. They're asleep. All our moderators are asleep, so we're just gonna have to deal with the bot in the chat. It's okay. Inspect. No. Okay, moving on. Greebles. We want a box because boxes are boxes. I don't know. Right, box. In terms of size, this is way too big for a greeble. So let's do 0. Oh, that's too tiny. Let's do 0.5. 0.25. Why not? That still might be too small. It depends on the scale of the building. It depends on what the greeble is. It depends on a lot of things. But let's just get something there. I'm really overthinking the scale of this, but yeah. Okay, so let's do a box, and we're going to do a torus. We're going to do a torus. Quick thing with the box, I do want this centered in the world, and maybe a little bit flat. No, we're not detailing. We're not detailing. Let's get it functional first. We can always, these are prototypes. It's placeholders. It was all very temporary. Right, so in terms of scale for the torus, let's do 0.5. Why not? Can we reduce that? No, not that one. What does this one do? Yeah, okay. And then we are going to do a cylinder because why not? Now the reason I want these different shapes is just so I can see it easier. It's not more complicated than that. It's quite simple. We can also assign different colors to them to also make them more visible. So that's something we can look at. Right. In terms of this thing, what I am going to do is I'm actually going to zero out that. And in terms of this one, we're probably doing 0.25. And height, we are probably going to reduce a drastic amount as well. Right. Brilliant. I am going to add in caps. So those are our agreeables. In terms of moving on from that, we want to do, how are we going to put this? We want to draw a curve on top of the building and have our agreeables copy to points, basically. And that's the end goal. However, as it is currently, firstly, we do not have a curve. So bottom line is, if I was to geometry to copy, so that would be that one. This is not getting copied, this is the points we're copying to. If I was to merge this, as it is currently, right? If I would grab these, plop them into here, and plop them to copy to points, and view that. Firstly, we're all overlapping, which is not what we want. Secondly, it's copying to the corners. We don't want it to copy to corners, we want it to copy to a curve, right? So that's not going to work either. So we need a couple of things. We need to be able to split out the three. So the torus, the box, and the cylinder. So that's one thing we need to do. But we also need a curve. So that's the next thing. What I like to do personally is I like to test things on a grid, especially when we're doing our copy to points, before I bother with curves and making things more complex. So, let's do that. We are going to grab a grid, but I actually don't want it to be part of that network. So let's just grab grid off to the side. So that's going to be grid, right? I'm going to leave everything as default on the grid. And then we are going to plop that into point copy to. Right, so that gives us this. Again, everything is overlapping, which is not what we want. So instead of doing a merge, what we're actually going to be doing is creating a merge pact. So that is going to be, now merge pact is one of those nodes that if you ask me to explain to you how it differs from a merge, I cannot, but I just know which situation to use it versus not. I don't know the logic behind that. I cannot explain it. We can Google it. But bottom line is use a merge pact. Right, so from there we are going to move over to, what's it called? What is it called? It's not a split. Is it a split? No. I practiced this last night and I knew what it was called, but it's not this. It's not an instance. Is that prototype? No. Am I really gonna get stuck this quickly? Now, last night, I made this file and I got it working. And I asked myself the question, was I gonna remember how to do this? And I told myself that yes, I am going to remember. I was wrong. So let's quickly think. It is something to do with attribute, I think, if I remember correctly. Right, so let's see. Not combine, not duplicate. It's not an adjust. Attribute from pieces. That one. It is that one. Right. So the first thing we need is actually geometry library. And the second thing we need is the point cloud. Now the point cloud is the same geometry that you are going to be copying to. So if we were to use a curve, it would be a curve. In this case, we're just using a grid for demonstration purposes and to figure out whether everything works. All right. So that goes into there. that goes into there, and then that gets connected back up there. If I did correctly. Geometry library, that is all well and good. Where you're not working. It seems. Right, let's quickly jump into here. Cycle. We do run random. We do want to shuffle pieces. Now again, this is why I'm not using a curve. Oh, I think it's the wrong way around. Geometry to copy that one. No, it's not the wrong way around. Oh, why are you not working? So that is the geometry library, so that is correct. That is the point cloud, so that is also correct. That is geometry to copy, so that is fine. I'm missing something here. Right, let's quickly get our geometry spreadsheet. So that is going to be, can I split please, pretty please? Not that button. Right. I'm working on a wider screen today, so that is really messing with me. I do not want the left to right, by the way. I actually want top to bottom, but it's struggling. It is fine. We are going to close Paint tab. Right. We are now actually going to split it top to bottom. Right. Then we want the geometry spreadsheet. Right. So that part is functional. It is giving a name. Ah, I've got it. So we want to specify that the source group should be name, I think. Piece attribute name. And that's still not working. Away. It's always when you want to demonstrate something, and it's always on the live stream. Can't pack an instance, but that's not what we want to do. Target points, no. Source group. Why are you being a nightmare? Right, attribute name. That is, in fact, the geometry library. That is a merge packed. That is all correct. Right, so let me quickly check whether I have missed anything. Name override, no. Pivot location, that is all correct. That is fine. Shuffle pieces is fine. Promotion. I don't think I changed anything there. Copy attributes. Name. Mode was random. Offset does nothing. Uniform distribution is fine. Alright, so that's geometry to copy. And then, but the big question is, why are we getting a grid? And why is it not working? Why is it doing this specifically? Quickly scale this up. Let's template that. Alright. Could just template that as well. So that is tiny as it should be. This is big as it should be. So let's try 20 and 20. Because the other thing that's throwing me off right now is it looks to be copying the planes, which is firstly very incorrect, but secondly doesn't make sense because I've got nothing that is actually at this scale. Because if we look at the grid, that is in fact square. If we look at the attribute from pieces, we've got nothing. The merge packed is functional because we've got that. So it's breaking specifically at this point. What happens if we flip these two? I know it's not meant to be the other way around though, so I mean. I lied. Apparently it is supposed to be the other way around. Right. So. Oh, my tablet is dying again. We're gonna hope it does not. You probably won't be able to see it on the stream, but from my end, my screen goes completely black. Right. So we do not want that. We do want all of those. Let me quickly pack an engine transform. Right. And let me see. Case one group, source group. But that is the wrong way around. That's why it's not working. I am actually going insane. So that is copying everything as it's not supposed to do. Target points is fine. Copy to points is fine. Source group. Now here's where things go a little bit wonky. If I wonder, wait, let me try and do add name. That gives us nothing. I had all of this working yesterday. Why is it not working now? Right, let's take a look. I'm gonna quickly jump over to YouTube and let's see. Because I was following a tutorial in part, at least for some of it, and then I worked off of that. So let me just quickly double check. What am I missing? I'm gonna make sure that's muted, and I'm just quickly going to jump through this. It's gonna take like 30 seconds, if that much. Right, so that's merge packed. Uniform distribution average. Name, right. Just checking if I haven't missed anything. Right, so firstly I was correct. This needs to connect with that. That needs to connect with this, right? So that's the first thing. They use piece weights. Alright, let's see if I've missed anything else. The name is the name, mode is random, and we have got the correct settings there. This, however, gives us nothing. So that is geometry to copy. Let's quickly check here. We're currently getting no names, which is interesting. Let me just quickly check. Ah, 84 pages. Right. That's still not working. Okay. But that's when you already have got it working. Right, let's jump back quickly. Let's jump back quickly. Can I put this on like double the speed so we can quickly go over this? It's supposed to work from the start. I did do a merge pact, which is fine. We do have the attribute from pieces, which is fine. Let's add a new one. Attribute from pieces, plop that into there, require geometry to copy, and then we do need a grid. Alright, so that works, but the second we plug it into here, it doesn't. But why? But why? Let's quickly shrink down the plane. Let's do back to 10. I was so confident this yesterday when it was actually working. But you know, sometimes things don't go according to plan. Right, so that is working. And then they copy to points based upon name. And that would be, just check. Let me just check. I think it's according to name. Right? Target points, piece attribute, name. That still does nothing. That still does nothing. The only thing I can guess is that for some reason, bounding box, point cloud, full geometry, that all works. Right, let me delete that one. Let's quickly check. Do we actually have a name attribute? We do have a name attribute, and it's copied specifically to points. Alright. So that is functional. So I'm missing something else. So that needs to be turned off. Right. Let me quickly jump back. We are going to copy just that. Right. And that does work. Right. Getting our steps in here. And we've got the attribute from pieces. And in theory, by default, it's supposed to work. So without changing anything on this attribute from pieces, it is supposed to basically be plug and play and it works. So let's quickly find that again. Add from pieces. Right. However, that's supposed to be plugged into there, that's supposed to be plugged in. Doesn't work. Why? Let's quickly. Piece attribute is not an integer or a string attribute in the target input, so ignoring piece attribute in the target input. So in other words, is the problem the actual not an integer or a string attribute in the target input? I want to test something. Doesn't work, right? It still seems to me like things are flipped around, which doesn't actually make sense because I have added the input to the correct. I'm stupid. I'm stupid. It's supposed to be no that way around. I'm actually wait. That goes there. Brilliant. It's functional. It is functional. Now I need that. Right. So what was the problem? The problem was as follows. We never specified. Well, no, I lie. Let me start over. The attribute from pieces is assigning basically unique information to each point, which determines what is copied to each point. Now that is a very, very vague description, but we're going to run with it. So bottom line is the problem I was having is I was copying this grid. Well, the way it's meant to work is this grid gets fed into here, right? Along with the geometry we eventually want to copy. And basically it assigns unique values to each point, and this will now become our new base for copying onto. So the reason it wasn't working was because I was attaching this the grid back into the network again down the line. Right. Bottom line is it's working now. It is functional. The reason you would want to use this is because you can basically offset it. You can do patches, which gives you patches of one object. You can do it completely random. I usually do it random. Right. So that is that. Moving on from that, let's take a quick water break. That took way longer than expected. But yeah, bottom line is using a grid or anything that's static will make things easier when it comes to troubleshooting because I know my primitives are fine. So I know the problem is not coming from up here because they default and I've not added anything to them. They just merged. So I knew the problem wasn't coming from there. Then we've got the grid. Okay, fine. The grid is also pretty much the default. So that sort of narrows it down to these two nodes, which makes things easier to find. Now, did it still take me eternity and 2 days to find the solution? Yes, yes, it did. However, it is resolved, it is working, we are well and good. Hello. So I'm actually taking a look at your Greeble situation. So I was having a problem. I've since resolved it, but bottom line is I had some trouble getting to this point. But okay, so since you're here, I'm just quickly going to go over everything again. Bottom line is we're using placeholder Greebles because I've not actually got Greebles on hand, so I'm just using a box, a torus, and a cylinder so we can see the different ones. That gets fed into a merged pact. I'm not going to go into the difference between merge and merged pact because I'm just not going to. And then we've just quickly got a grid. Now the grid is just for testing purposes. So it's just to make sure that we are assigning unique agreeables to each point. So it's just for testing purposes that will be switched out for a curve. And then I've got my very beautiful, extravagant, advanced sci-fi building here. Um, Again, for demonstration purposes. So yeah, that's that. And then we've got attribute from pieces. Now, this was something that just tripped me up for about 20 minutes. So let's quickly go over what went wrong. I have visited this before, but let's just quickly go over. Bottom line is the thing you copy logically. This is how my brain works. If I'm using the grid to copy geometry too, in other words, I'm using the grid's points to copy to, in my mind, the grid should go into target points. It doesn't. It gets fed into an attribute from pieces. And then that it's just set to default at the moment. We can play around with it. But yeah, that's just set to default. And I will be going over playing with it, but for now it's just default. And then that gets copied to points. Again, this is what's determining what points, and that is obviously our Greebles, so to speak. Now, the reason you use the attribute from pieces is if you actually get rid of that, it's just going to copy all your merged primitives on top of each other, which we don't actually want. And we also don't want to mess with the same Greeble getting copied and then using a different curve for another Greeble. We don't want to have it that messy or cluttered because that's going to be a giant network. So yeah, bottom line is that. Right, so we've got that working. Now obviously we don't actually want a grid. So I'm just going to duplicate this network because I know this is functional. And just in case I ruin something along the way, I just like having a duplicate. I know I can undo and I can solve it again, but just in case. Do we need ID? In this case, no. Just because you're kind of getting that from the name attribute specifically, because it's giving basically cylinder geo is becoming a name, a torus, etc., etc. If you want to make it more different, you can also do piece weights and do autofill pieces and just do like prototype one, whatever. and that'll also give you names, but we could get into that down the line. So bottom line is I did not need ID, just because we're using name instead of ID. But up to you which you use. This is basically just a method for splitting things out. Right. So once we've got that, let's quickly view our actual building. Now, the tool you're looking for is going to be this one, primitive snapping. And you want to make sure that you can snap to templates, right? So that is now templated, and then we can do a curve. Now, for sci-fi specifically, I personally prefer using polygons because that's going to give you straight lines. You can get a straight line from a curve. You can. From a Bezier or an herb or whatever, you can. It's more difficult, but it can. But bottom line is I just prefer using a curve for this because it makes it a little bit easier. How long have I been using Houdini? That's a good question. About a year and a half, almost 2 years. But inactively, because although I love Houdini and if I could work in it every single day, I would. However, I'm actually a character artist by profession. At least that's what I do predominantly. If I could do props and environments instead, I would be happier, but character work is where I've got work at the moment, so we are doing characters. But yeah, Houdini isn't that applicable for your normal standard character workflow, at least not in the modeling phase of things. There's exceptions to that, but general rule of thumb. Right, so this is templated. We need to turn on snapping. And then we also need to turn this thing on so we can actually create the... Now watch this not work. This is not going to work because I'm trying to demonstrate something. Okay, it actually did. I'm happy. Right, so the point is it follows the shape of your building. So if you have walls that are crooked or whatever, it shapes accordingly. Now, I went over this a bit earlier, but bottom line is there's a slight problem with this. It's not going to curve your greeble. So in other words, if you've got a cylinder, it's not going to wrap around. Your greeble will follow the orientation of the cylinder, but it's not going to deform around the cylinder, so to speak. So that is sort of a flaw to the system and something you'll have to look at down the line. But bottom line is, right, we've got our pretty placement thing. Now, as it is currently, this is great. However, it only has X amount of points, right? Why aren't you copying? Oh, it's not copying because it's actually a curve. Right, so you do a resample, that'll convert it pretty much to ages and points and all of that. Resample, and you get that. Now, the problem with this resample is it's got a massive amount of points. Now, of course, still doesn't work. Why are you being like this? Right, so that goes into there. Let's just quickly take a look at this. There's a name. It's uniform. It's a uniform distribution. Right. Oh, it was because we're still on piece weights. Right. No. Uniform. Right. We've got it. We've got it. This also demonstrates what I was meaning, what I was talking about before. This curve, because it's polygons, only has 4 points. 4 points are great, but chances are you'd want more of it. More points, that is. We've also got the slight problem where the normal orientation is incorrect. That's something we'll have to fix as well. But bottom line is starting point. So what I like to do is I like to do a resample and then I adjust this to reduce the number of actual greebles that are getting copied. You can do subdivision instead if you want. You could play with it. You can do that. You can do whatever you want, basically. The only thing with noting that I'm not liking a lot is the fact that this corner is getting dipped in, but that's just due to basically the way this is set up. But yeah, bottom line is we can play with it, we can reduce it. I would use maximum segment length probably instead of maximum segments because that does give a little bit of better result. Right, talking about normals. We have a problem here where the normal direction is in fact incorrect. We want to orient along. Where's my orient along normal? Let's do along. I've not got along normals. How's that possible? Orientation along curve? No. Oh, let's do that. Why not? Is that going to be what we want? Orient along curve? Let's see. It is orient along curve. I've gone insane. Right. Now, as you'll notice, that has done officially nothing. Now, it could be due to the fact that if we actually go back to our original curve, let's quickly template this again. In the settings, we've not basically taken normal account. So I believe, if I remember correctly, orient snap needs to be on. I think. And I think normal base needs to be on as well. I could be wrong on this. We're going to mess with it a little bit. Again, I did take a look at this last night, but quite frankly, it was a long day. So we're going to play with it till it works, basically. That gets resampled. I wonder if we place that there. Why are you not working? Just quickly take a look at something else. Ha! Found it. It is transform using target point orientation. That needs to be turned on. But yeah, bottom line is this copies everything over. I am curious about the square specifically rotating. That is not ideal actually. So let's take a look at that. Firstly plot that into there. Right. So that was partly due to that. It's specifically doing it on the corners, which is fine. But it's only doing it on the corners. That's something you'll probably have to look at. You'll probably have to look at that. Especially because for a sci-fi environment specifically, you are going to have a lot of corners. An alternative to that would be to actually split out these curves. Like draw a line and then another line to go down. Something you'll have to play with. But bottom line is that's how you do the placement. Now some other fun things you could do with this, once you've got it working, is you could add a sweep to it. Let's say you had a pipe or something. So let's say that goes into there, this goes into there, that goes into there, and then we change that to round tube. And then we measure it all together. Right. Something I would want to look at, however, now obviously this part is not ideal because am I following any concept or going with the flow? I am going with the flow here, just due to the fact that this is just a demonstration. I had a question on Tuesday about how to place greebles, and this is sort of not something I've done before, just due to the fact that I have not created a sci-fi environment in Houdini. I've created it otherwise, but not within Houdini. So we had a question about placing greebles. So this is just, let's say, demonstration of a technique that could possibly be used in order to place them. Now, the actual project we are working on is actually not a sci-fi environment. It is this thing. So we've got, let me just turn that off. We've got basically the start of a tower. We've got the start of 3 houses. This one's probably the most detailed at the moment, but it's not done. And we've got a lantern. In terms of the concept itself, we've got lovely AI references. It's just references, it's not concepts. We are not trying to create a one-to-one. But bottom line is this is the rough inspiration for everything. I wouldn't call it a concept, just due to the fact that I'm firstly not creating one-to-one to it, but technically it's AI. And it's just due to the fact that I'm looking for a mood board and not for an actual concept. I want to create relatively independently and play around and see what I get, basically. Right, so jumping back into here. Once you've got that, another thing you can play with, obviously you've got scaling. So if you adjust scaling, or maybe if you do something like add p scale to it, you'll have a little bit more variation. Something I have not tried but have wanted to is I'm curious what would happen if you add a null. Would that give us a gap in between? And it does. So you can also play with adding a null to space them a little bit more and have some variation, so to speak. Alright, so that is that. If we play a little bit more of the resample, maybe increase the amount of segments, maybe, and reduce the scale of the sweep, just so that we can see it a little bit easier, and I'm also going to get rid of the points. Basically, bottom line is you can get different types of results. You can also play around with patterning or distribution. So to do that, you can do piece attribute, beautiful pieces, and then you can actually go into here and tell it how much you want from each one. Maybe you want predominantly the null, maybe you don't want too many boxes, maybe you want a lot of cylinders, which is actually the cone shape. Maybe you want less of the torus. Bottom line is you can play with it to get different results. So yeah, bottom line is that's sort of how I would approach this. If you have any questions on this, let me know. But bottom line is this is a relatively simple network that should do the job, depending on how and what you want to do. If you, all right, let me just quickly, right, so we've got a thing in the chat. Right, let me just quickly, also this is my reference, by the way, I'm going to add more detail, but keep it ritualistic like Dune. I like this reference. I like it. So what would you be doing in terms of the greebles themselves? What are you looking to turn into greebles? Because obviously my original reference for this, or at least what I found in terms of greebles, were more on the sci-fi, this side of things. So my question for you would be, does the node network apply to your situation, or do you think it doesn't? Because if it doesn't, we can take another look and maybe find a different solution for placing the variables. Because the method I'm demonstrating here is more applicable to your, I'd say more sci-fi side. Maybe a little bit different, but let me know and we can revisit. But bottom line is this is the method I would use, generally speaking. You might not need the pipes, especially for your specific reference, but yeah, it gives you a base. Right. Let me hide that. Focusing for half a second. What are we working on today in terms of the actual environment? No, I don't want to move that. Right. Let me think. Let me think. In terms of what we've gotten done so far, we do have the lantern, we've got the tower, we've got 3 houses, although one of them is not quite to the standard I would like. Well, actually, 2 of them. Then none of them are technically completed, but they sort of reached a phase where I cannot complete them until I've resolved some issues. I went over this a little bit at the beginning of the stream, but bottom line is, um, I want a way of randomly swapping out segments on this tower. I've just realized I'm actually pointing to the screen and you can't see it. Right, bottom line is I want a way of randomly swapping out segments, and I want them to stack properly because I could do similar to what I did with the agreeables, but the problem is point distribution is usually quite even. My segments aren't even, so that's not really a viable option. Then we've got the house. I'm struggling with the scaling of the roof tiles and the rotation. I want a way to randomize that. I've not found a solution for that. I've spent too much time on it. I'll be doing that off stream and showing you guys once I've got it completed. And then we've got the lantern. I'm relatively happy with the lantern. We might refine it a little bit. But yeah, bottom line is I can't add the roof tiles to the other houses until I've got it functional and working to the standard that I want it to be working. So yeah, there is that. Quickly going to turn on the AC. Right. Moving on. In terms of the lantern, I was thinking that I don't want this to be so constant. In the sense of I do not want the line to go all the way up and all the way down. I want some variation. Maybe the base is solid. So let's take a look at that. That is going to be, I've actually named it. It's a miracle. I very rarely name things. I should do it more. Right. Let's see. Let us see, new message. Okay, now that's fine. We want to go to the base specifically. I did not organize this network after I worked on it on stream. That's starting to become a theme there, but anyway. So those are the curves. Mat size is fine. Merge is fine. Is this done with the curve? No, that's not down either. Okay, it's here. It's here. Right, so this is technically our base, technically speaking. As it is currently, the entire thing gets extruded. If we move a little bit down, we get a group arrange, and that is then getting poly extruded. Great, it works. It does work. This also gets beveled and fold, but I don't want this to happen to the base. So we've got 2 options. We could either split out the top and the bottom, have them as 2 separate objects. That would be the easiest. Alternatively, we could group the faces based upon bounding blocks, which is less procedural in a way. Right, let me just quickly check the chat. Honestly, Houdini feels like a foreign language. I started with 3ds Max, now learning Blender. What do you feel about the Houdini workflow? Good question. Now I'm very biased. I'm going to say I love it and adore it and would spend every day in it. But to give you an actual answer, Houdini is very, I would almost say niche. It's a very valuable skill to have, but it's not the traditional modeling workflow. It's not necessarily, it's niche. Your procedural environment artists will use it. Your tech artists will use it. Your VFX artists will use it. Those types of people will use it, but your standard character environment artist probably won't. Does that mean don't learn it? No. Do learn it. It's fun. But it's different. But it is nice in the sense of you've got a level of flexibility and editability and a way to iterate very quickly once everything is set up, mind you. But once everything is set up, you can very quickly iterate and show different variations for the things. For example, if I were to jump into one of these, let's do that one. Probably at the control point. Why not? I don't actually want this to be templated. Right, so this is the front of the building, so I can decide, well, actually, I want a door and a window. Don't want two doors. Or I can decide, well, I want a smaller door, right? I can decide I want a shorter or taller door. And this is all built in. And I can decide, well, actually, I want bigger windows, or I want less windows, or yeah, bottom line is I've got that level of editability built in that you're not going to get from standard modeling. So there is that. Thank you so much for walking through the process. It was very helpful. I can modify from there for the content. I was thinking along the lines of a reactor core of some kind on the cylinder itself, because it will be very FX heavy, sequence with blast and trying fluid as well. I want to see that. I want to see that. So if once you've been working on it a little bit, please do post it on the Discord's work in progress section. We're trying to be more active on there as well and give feedback to people in between. For those of you that are not part of the Firestorm Discord, it is free to join. Anyone is welcome. Everyone is welcome. We're nice people. Come hang out. We also often chat at times, hang out in the voice chat. So that counts for actually all of our streamers. Well, except Peter, he doesn't really do it, but all our other streamers hang us out in the voice chat, and you guys can literally hop onto the call and chat with us and see what we're working on. We don't always share screen. Me specifically, I don't often, because just due to the fact that I'm often working on NDA stuff. But in the event I'm not working on something that has an NDA, I do share my process. I'm currently working on a skull, a bird skull for a client slash friend. And I'm not actually that big of a fan of sculpting. I can do it. It's not something I enjoy particularly, but I can. So I sometimes share that. Right. Enough about ads. Because that was a little bit of an ad, because I don't know. I love the community. People are nice. People are fun. Come talk to us. Come hang out. Right, so as I was saying, we could potentially, for sure, I'm also trying to use the workflow for the second time. I might even hop on voice chat, just working on it. I would love that. Please do that. Please do that. I have explored USDs a little bit, but I really do mean a little bit. I understand the basic concept of it, but it's not something that I've messed with enough to really know what it's about. It's more I learned about it in theory rather than the actual hands-on workflow. All right, but that is one of the big pros of Houdini, is the USD part of it. I need to explore it more. All right, so this nightmare. Right. Let's see. Bottom line is, as I was saying, we could split this out into two parts. However, if we do that, there's a chance that the top and the bottom won't quite line up. The top of the, let's say, bottom donut and the top of the actual pillar won't line up. Because if we ever adjust the shape down the line, that could be a problem. So we're not going to do that. I initially thought that might be the better approach, but in hindsight, no. What we were doing instead is a group by the bounding box. The problem with that is, however, that if we do change the shape, we're going to run into the same issue. We're going to run into the same issue because, yes, it will only select the same amount that it used to select. However, if we were to change the shape of the cylinder, the lantern base, We're going to change the shape, and maybe we want the donuts to be taller. The bounding box is not going to adjust accordingly. So what we could do instead is we can do basically the setup we have here, except we will add end caps and basically create a second curve to determine this shape. So the first shape will be the top portion and the second shape will be the bottom portion. So that would be an option. Right, so let's do that. Let's see. So we're basically going to need everything up until this point. And for this one, we do actually want end caps. The reason why we didn't want end caps for these ones is if we add end caps here, and we go down to the extrude, it actually extrudes the bottom as well. You see, it kind of does this weirdness. Without end caps. I say all of this, but I actually don't mind that. I don't mind that. However, I don't think it's what we want from this one. Right, so bottom line is that is without end caps. Now, in terms of this one, we actually want it to be maybe 0.5. Yeah. And then we want to change the shape, obviously, because the shape is fine for what we had before. It's not fine. Can I magically reset this? Please. Revert to defaults. Brilliant. Right, let's do this. That is going to go that way, and I do like the bezier for this, so I'm going to keep that. I'm also going to template the original, just so I can sort of see what we were going for before. Am I going to make a one-to-one match? Probably not. Probably not. Because a one-to-one match would be quite boring. Right. Right, let's see. Let us see what we could do. I want a bigger base at the bottom. So let's do that. Maybe something like that. I don't want that sharp corner there though. Yeah, I like that. Right, bear in mind, as it is currently, firstly we already have a base. So we need to get rid of the base of the original. Secondly, if this gets extruded, actually template this. The extruded part is actually wider than the actual base, which is going to look pretty stupid. So what we can do is actually widen it a little bit more. Maybe like that. Just so that it goes to the exterior. Right, so that done, what we do want to do next is actually get rid of this base. So let's do that, that, that. No, I actually want that one. We could potentially, and we should, I've not done it, but we should technically copy this on top. I would recommend it. Just due to the fact that we don't technically want geometry inside of geometry, so we can fix that in a second. But let's just get it functional first, then we can make it good. That's pretty much my methodology with everything. Functional, then good. And sometimes I forget about making it good and just keep it at functional, but that's a side note that we're going to ignore. Right, so that gets merged. Hello, don't do that. Merge. So that gets merged, that gets plopped into there, and then can we? do that. I might have broken everything now, but let's see. Away. Now see, I already don't like that. I already don't like that. Firstly, because the base is too rounded. And too tall. Right. Let's fix that. So that base can be wide. And then I want it to be shorter. Right, let's do that. It was currently at that. Let's try 3.5. I think that's too short. Let's try 4. Alright. Now the shape will need to be adjusted just due to how it's built. So no, I don't want to actually add a point to it. I actually want to grab this one. Make it wider. Right. Let's see. Let's see. I'm just not a fan of the shape. I'm really not. But okay, let's mess with it a little bit more. Such an ugly shape. Why are you ugly? Right. Right. Let's start over. Not really. We're not going to start over, but I'm going to play with it a little bit more. What I think I'm going to do is I am actually going to keep it at a 0.5. Alright? And then I'm going to copy the top one on top. I am going to do it. The reason being is we're not going to get a full picture until everything is copied on top of each other, just due to the fact that, how I'm going to explain this. Just due to the fact that if I make the base too narrow, it's actually going to clip through the base of the original, which I don't want. So let's do match size. It's probably going to be our easiest option. So let's do match size, and then we are going to grab that one, and that is going to be that one, and that is going to go into there. And what we actually want to do is, I always flip these the wrong way around, but let's do min and max. Yeah. And then that gets merged. Right? Merge, plop that into there, that goes into there, and then if we look at it all together, we've got this. Which is also not what we want, right? We do not want this. This is very boring. We do want a different shape. So I'm actually going to pop into here. Do I want to start over again? I don't particularly. Let's see what we can do. I do want a quite strong base. So that is fine. And that lines up with what we've got here. However, from there, I want more of a, I don't know what shape I want. I do think I maybe only want one bump. Is that going to be too boring? Maybe. Maybe like that. And then in terms of the original, we don't want those bumps at the bottom. So let's actually remove this one. So that can get plopped right into there. What I do, however, I do want it to sit properly on top, and then what I suspect I'm going to be doing is first add another point. Is we're actually going to add a little bit of a detail here, not a lot, and it's going to be quite what? Can I grab this handle, please? I've broken everything. Right. That's fine. We can break stuff. We can enjoy breaking stuff. Why not? Right. So that gives us that. We don't actually want that. Let's press control. Right. We're getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere. Now, in terms of this dot specifically, it's driving me absolutely up the wall. Can I get rid of it? No, apparently no, I cannot get rid of it. What about this one? Can I get rid of that one? That one I can get rid of. Okay. We're making progress. Slowly making progress. Right, so that can get squished. Do you know what I want? I want the ability to zoom into this network. I want the ability to zoom into this graph so I can adjust it easier. But half the problem is I didn't put my contact lenses in this morning. Why, you may ask? I do not know. I was lazy. And also they bother my eyes. So we're winging it without them. Let's do that. And then we can also squish this a little bit. No, that is too squishy. Okay. Let's just view what it looks like together and then we can decide whether we hate it or love it. So that goes into there, match size there, and then merge. So technically we can remove this one. In terms of this match size, what are you doing? Where are you coming from? Now see, that's better. It's better. Right, I might have still broken something somewhere, yes. Where are you from? And what are you meant to be? It looks like we've got... Oh, the roof is too tall. I've never tried contact lenses. How does it feel working with them in? Honestly, I'm at a point where I no longer notice them at all. I think the first week or so was rough. But also, you've got two methods of cleaning them. You've got a normal saline solution, but you've also got one with peroxide in it. Now it turns out my eyes are a nightmare, and with saline solution it just doesn't clean adequately. So they go foggy within a week, and they're meant to last a month, which gets expensive real quickly. So I've switched to a peroxide solution. Only downside to it is it needs to be in the solution for at least 6 to 8 hours, otherwise you burn your eyeballs off. Or at least it feels that way. So, bottom line is, I like them. I don't really notice them. And the reason I use them is, firstly, I don't like the weight of glasses on my face. They drive me insane. Even sunglasses I do wear, but I don't like wearing. So there's that. But also it doesn't fog up. It's if they work, you don't feel them at all. If they need to be replaced, they're a nuisance because they do get scratchy and sometimes they tear and stuff like that or crack. If they crack or tear, it's unpleasant. It feels like you've got sand in your eyes then. Um, so there's that. I will say though, life changing for me personally. Um, really, really enjoy them. Why are you not working? I've got a double somewhere, don't I? I've got a double. Right. Delete that. That is the double. I think if we merge those, they should be functional. I still despise the shape of that base though. I really do. And I'm not sure why. It's just ugly. It's ugly. What else can I say? It's ugly. Alright, let's see what else we can do. Maybe we can make it even taller. Is that the right approach? Probably not, but let's try it. Let's do 7.5. Maybe it's a proportional problem. Because most times it's not the shape that's actually the problem, it's the proportions that are making the shape incorrect. Because I would personally say that this is already better than what we had. So, right, I do want to add a little bit more detail to this though. I'm not sure whether that specific approach is the approach I want to follow to do it, but what about something like that? Now see how I like that more. I like that a lot more. I like it more. Right, let's see what that looks like. I would argue the base is a little bit too small. Maybe. Let's view it from the front. Yeah, I think so. Just, it looks like it would topple over. But what if we put it on, in the original reference, it has it like on a pedestal. Maybe if we do that, it'll look more balanced. And the other problem I have is if you look at it from this view, it's a very gradual shape. It's too smooth, it's too boring. Let's adjust the shape of the original lantern, the glass part, because I actually hate that. So let's do that. Perspective, and then we can take a look at things. In terms of where the original lantern is coming from, that would be here. And then I would argue this needs to be set to 1. Now I might have broken other things. I'm not quite sure what specifically I've placed with match size and whatnot, but it's only these curves that are the problem. Right, okay, so we need to find them. Now here's, at least the bottom on the ground is too small. I agree. I agree. We'll fix that. I'm first going to make it a little bit more top heavy. I'll expand the bottom as well, but I just like these proportions a little bit better because it's a little bit more interesting than just like a gradual taper. Just having that a little bit more oomph, so to speak. Right, so before I fix the bottom, that does need to be in fact wider, I'm first going to fix that curve at the top, and I'm not quite sure why it didn't move accordingly. So first let's figure out which one it was. Could it have been that one? Yeah. It is getting match sized, but I don't think it's going outwards. That's all rotation. I might regret this. We're going to move it by hand. However, that means if we ever change the shape of the lantern again, we'll have to move these again. It is what it is. We're going to work with it. Right. So what I actually want... No, but that looks stupid. Why do I have a point sticking up in there? Why? Right, we're fixing it. We're fixing it. Let's plop that there. And lift these guys up. Right, we're getting there. Is that perfect? No, but it's better. It's better. I still don't like that very much. Okay, but forget it for half a second. We are going to... It looks too much like horns. That looks too much like horns. Can we not do that? Can we remove these completely? Because I'm starting to doubt their placement. We're going to remove them because I actually prefer this with just the curves. Okay, we're removing them. They're gone. Never to be seen again. Don't like it, remove it. Right. Will I regret removing them? Maybe. Maybe I will. Maybe not. We're gonna hope for not. If I regret it, I could place something else in their place. But for now, I'm gonna argue and say I will not miss them. Right, so in terms of the base itself, making it wider. Let's do that. We could just scale this, but I'm not going to do that just due to the fact that that'll also widen the top, and I don't think I want that. So let's go to front view so we can actually see what's going on here. And we are going to make it wider. And this one can also be wider. And then let's play with this a little bit to see what we get. No, I do want to just taper slightly at the top. Why are you breaking? Can you not break, please? Pretty please. I just want to make you narrower. Why are you doing that? Awful. Absolutely awful. Very annoying. Right, undo. We're gonna forget about it. If anyone asks, no, that button is not broken. That was very decisive. I fall one of two categories, right? Either I instantly become very destructive. No. I'm either very decisive or very indecisive. There's no in between. Hey, we've got a new problem. We've got a new problem. If we make the base wider than everything else, our placement of our curves is off. But it's fine. We'll fix that in a second. But yeah, fun fact, I used to be a potter. I'm gonna do pottery. Actually, I used to be a lot of things, but one of them is pot. I used to be a potter. And I was one of those people that if one thing was a tiny bit wrong, I would smash the entire piece and start over. I've since learned a little bit more patience, and now I'll try to fix something before I destroy it. But eventually, yes, I get to a point where I just like, I'm done. It's gone. Alright, so, curve, curve. That's that one. And then we've got these, which I think is the correct one. And then in terms of the match size, we've got this. So what I would do is we're going to grab that and we're actually going to bring this inwards to around about there. Maybe a little bit up as well. Brilliant, it works. Right, I don't want this to be templated though. Is that too bottom heavy? Probably not. Probably not. Right, moving on. Let's just quickly close that down. What are we working on next? Because I can mess with this lantern more, but I honestly don't feel like it. I don't feel like messing with lantern more. We could. Right, so that died. Let me just quickly see if it's live again. It's live again. Sorry guys, everything died. I don't know why it died, but it did die. I'm pretty sure my Wi-Fi completely crashed. To be perfectly honest, I think it completely crashed. It is back live now. So there's that. Right. Right. What I'm now going to do, where was I? Oh, I would say, I'm going to make the brooch. And originally, the easy way out would be to use this as a reference. Right? Very easy to build. But something like this is just prettier. So, which one will we do? You know what? Go big or go home. Will I regret this? Probably. I think that's that's the general gist of everything I do. Is the question is always, will I regret this? And the answer is always yes. Well, that explains it well. It's very useful to be able to have that mindset because most times I find myself hovering too long on a problem that goes nowhere. I do sometimes have that problem as well. And I've actually found the key to that is walking away. If I find I'm hyper fixating on one specific area, I completely walk away for 10 minutes, sometimes 20. No, I know that seems counterintuitive because you're not being productive. Go make a cup of coffee, drink the first few sips of your cup of coffee peacefully, or tea if you prefer, and then come back to it. But quick rule, do not touch your phone in that time. Do not go on social media. Do not start scrolling because then you're completely going to ruin your productive flow. Do not start playing games. Sit peacefully. Just sit, drink your coffee, chat with people if there's people around if you'd like. It helps you decompress a bit. Maybe even chat to the person about whatever you're encountering, or if you're completely crazy like I am, talk to yourself. Just talk through the problem. What are you experiencing? What is the problem area? Why is it a problem area? What are possible solutions that you have not tried yet? Do you need this thing to be correct, or is it something you could potentially remove? Is it crucial to the project? Could you revisit this at a later stage? Does it have to be completed today? Go through the process of it all and kind of figure out how important it is, but also just things to try to fix it. And I find usually 9 times out of 10, before the 15 minutes is up, I've got the solution. Whether that is actually removing it or just something else to try, and it usually works. When you've been staring at the screen for so long, you tend to jump into a potential solution without thinking that solution through. The reason why I encourage to talk about it is because if you talk through the problem, you get the full picture, or write it down. It depends a bit on your the way you process information. Sometimes people prefer writing it down, and that will allow them to figure it out quicker. I'm a talker. I talk through it. I talk too much, mind you. I might be an introvert, but I talk too much, which is probably the only reason I can get away with streaming. Because I've been talking for what, an hour and 40 roundabout. So there is that. So yeah, but bottom line is when you get into that mindset of hyper fixating on that one area, it's a good idea to walk away. Right, so we've got a bridge. I want a bridge, I like a bridge. So what we're going to be doing is something a little bit different. Who am I kidding? We're going to be using lines again. Always lines, but that's the later problem. Right, so I'm actually going to view, no, let's keep it like that. This will need to be quite large, right? But we're going to start with it. So this is going to be, I actually I want this to be centered. I could probably I'm just going to match size it. I don't think I'm going to mess with it too much. So this is the X direction that I want to scale in. So I'm probably going to do something obscure like 10. And in terms of height, we're probably going to do, depends how close the buildings are though. But yeah. Let's do 10. In terms of width, How wide is the bridge, guys? How wide is a bridge? And what unit does Houdini use? I needed that talk during uni. Honestly, same. I would no. When I was still studying, I would not leave my PC. I would sit here day in and day out. I would get up at 5:30 and I would come down and drink my coffee at my PC and I would work on things because I was in uni for 3D. Actually, I wasn't even in uni for it. It was an online school. It was more like an online school than it was a uni. But anyway, bottom line is I would do that. And I would basically set up my PC until I went to bed. And what I would eventually realize is I made no progress. I spent all day at my PC. I achieved nothing. So, bottom line is once you've spent too much time on something, you stop making progress. Quite frankly, you stop making progress. No, I don't want 20, I want 2. Or 3. Let's do 3, and I'm actually going to switch this to 15. No, 2 is the number. Right, so that is going to go into a match size. And we are going to use it to center it. Brilliant. So that is centered. Next thing I want is, am I going to add it now though? Choices. We are going to add it now. Why not? So let's do a cylinder. That gets plopped into there. I'm going to template this just so I have a size reference, and then that's going to get plopped into there. In terms of height, we're probably going to go 2. I lied. We're going to do 4. Yeah, sure, why not? We can always change it. In terms of the number of sides, let's do 6. We're going to do 6. And then in terms of scaling, that's going to go to 1.5 maybe? Yeah, that's going to go to 1.5. And then we are going to use match size again. However, it actually needs to be the other way around, right? We are not going to use the minimum. No, not there. There we go. We are going to do center. Can we do center max? That looks stupid. What does min center do? Yeah, that's better. Exactly, but now indeed I'm much better at it once I graduated. Adulting has been quite the journey. I wish there was a manual for adulting 101. Because honestly, we'd all save so much time if somebody just taught us how to adult. Now, is that beneficial for the world? I think so, but some people might disagree. But I think if we got a lesson or what do you call it? Can't they teach us how to adult at school? That would be brilliant. Now, that's probably a topic I should not get into, but I mean, let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that before I say something I shouldn't. Alright, so let us see if we merge these. Now we'd actually boolean these together, but I just want to see the size before and the scale and how everything plays off each other before I merge them. No, that's fine. That is fine. Now we can do an extrude. How are we going to specify where the extrude goes? We'll see. We'll see. I wish, you know what I really wish? I wish Houdini had, you know how in extrude you can specify the front group, the back group, the side group, all of those groups. I wish the primitives came with those same groups. Like top, bottom, left, right. That would have been amazing. And end caps. End caps too. If they came with end caps that you could specify the group, have groups for the end caps. Why do we not have groups for end caps? I don't get it. I just don't. But to work around for that is, I believe, polyfill. I think polyfill gives you groups. So let's do that. Downside to polyfill, however, is we still need to split that top and the bottom. So there's that. I'm gonna turn the AC back off because I'm actually cold now and it doesn't want to do anything. Come on, do something, anything. I'll check out the batteries and see if that helps. It is starting to get cold here. Yep. Groups only for the end caps. Yeah, you can do it for polyfill. You can, but I would have preferred if I didn't have to add an extra node just to get that group. Or alternatively, I want groups for the top edges and the bottom edges. That would have been brilliant. Oh, fantastic. I think I've broken it completely. So yeah. Wherever I went with it. Sorry guys, we'll be right back. Not quite, I won't stop the stream, but yeah. Can I get the different modes now? No, I cannot. How annoying. I'm pretty sure the batteries are just flat, that's why I'm giving it. Okay, I'll freeze for the next 20 minutes, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so basically, to visually represent what I'm trying to do here, ideally I want to be able to select just those top ones, or just the bottom ones, things like that. Now again, we can do that with polyfill, but I don't like adding extra nodes if I can avoid it. So there is that. There is that. I've just realized we've got 116 people on the stream. Is it bot or am I actually going crazy? Right, so focusing half a second here, we want polyfill. Damn, is that cold? It's hot over in LA. I need rain and snow. It is. It's 25 Celsius. Not sure that is Fahrenheit, but it's humid as hell. So I'm used to 45 Celsius. I'm used to it. I prefer anything from 35 to 40 is my comfortable temperature, which I know is insane, but our houses are insanely cold. So it's 25, but it's humid. So I put the AC on. But now I can't get back off. So now I am actually freezing. So yeah, there is that. Right, so we want patch group. We've got patch group. What else have we got? Is it all in one group? What are these? Let's see. I think these are probably... Right, let's group. No, extrude actually. So that's going to be the extrude, and the group is going to be patch. But the problem with the patch group is, are we going to do it this way? Are we going to do it this way? Can't we specify 0, 1 the group? Probably not. Okay. Scratch that. Let's do a group. Let us do a group. But yeah, it's heading into winter now, which I'm not very happy about, because I'm not a fan of winter. I like summer. I like being warm. I do not like the cold, which is ideal for where I live, because I basically live on the border of the Kalahari Desert. If it wasn't for the river, I'd be in the desert, guys. I'd be in the desert. So due to that, it's usually fine, but no. But it's not fine when the AC doesn't turn off. Right, so poly extrude. We want to specify group, and that is going to be group 1. Did we specify the group name? No, we did not, but it's fine. Let's extrude by something like 5. Let me just see where we're at. I think we're actually going to increase the height of this to 15 as well. Yes, we're going to. Right, so that, and then we are going to extrude. So, now I had a slight thought, and originally I was going to Boolean these together. But the problem with that is then we lose the interior. And if we then Boolean out the sides, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? Because we want a walkway in the middle. We're going to make it shorter. We're going to make it shorter. And then we're basically going to make 2 fences on top of this. Not fences, archways. It's going to be like a wall with arches, and then there'll be a gap in the middle of the wall. Yeah. Does it make sense? Probably only to me. But we're running with it. We're running with it. So, poly extrude. And that is going to be group 1 again. No, right. Output side. We want the side group because we're going to extrude again. Can you fit it? I think fracture has a full interior. Potentially. We could do that. We could. I've never worked with fracture, which is a shame. Which is a shame. Let's do group side. Ooh, not that much. Maybe I have to use it as a stand then. That would be good. We can take a look at that. We can take a look at that. Let me just quickly see what we're working with here. Now, obviously, we'd want this height to line up. So, can we do that? We can do that. Alright, and then I might want slightly less height for the extrude. So let's do how much? 4? Do we actually want this to be shorter? I mean, why not? Let's do 4. Let's do 4. And I am going to extrude a little bit more outwards, I think. Maybe we can create an inset. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Let's do the inset, and then we can increase the distance a little bit. Brilliant. Right, next. We are going to create our normal thing. I'm not even going to explain this. I've done this so many times. We have a line. We are going to need a curve. For example, plot that into there. That goes into there. Resample it. You know what? I'm just going to copy it from somewhere else because this is going to take too long. And my patience has officially run out. Right, so that is, let's grab it from Ranton, and that is going to be up here. Copy. Is that everything we need? No, so let's actually go into here. Can we find the door? Arch, boolean. Bada bing, copy. And then we're going to jump into here. Plop that into there. Let's quickly check what is the output on this. Nothing. Line, that's working. Oh, it's just teeny. Gonna remove the transform. Why is it so small? It's tiny. Actually, it's not so bad, but it is tiny. Right, we're going to do another transform. We're going to add one back in. But this one doesn't have the extra additional controls that the previous one had. Because obviously the previous one had control at the bottom of the network that allowed us to adjust things. Right, transform gets plopped into there and right. Scaling wise, I think we're probably going to do twice. I probably should have added this outside of the network. Let's do that. Can I cut this? I'm not plop it down here. Just so I can view everything at once and it makes my life a little bit easier. Right, so let's template that to view this. Brilliant. In terms of height, we might want 4 times that. Right. And then we do want a different shape, but that shape is quite frankly boring. So let's do this one. Let us do this one. Can you frame it? Right, there you go. Attribute, and then I might actually have to view it from the mirror point. Right, let's see. So I do want this to be straight there. Do I want the extra dip here, maybe? Can we add like a... don't go wider. Let's do that. Just a little bit. I might regret that. But okay. There we go. And then we plop that into the output. Geo, right. And then we do want to scale this because currently this can't boolean anything. So let's do scale on the z-axis times 2. Right, and then we need a boolean, and that is going to be boolean subtract. Or why not? And then we subtract a from b. Why not? That way around. Bada bing, bada boom. No, flip it. We could flip it within the node itself, but yeah. The resample destroyed everything. Where is that resample? Where is it? Where are you? There we are. Can you not do that? There we go. I think if we just avoid this, we're probably the best off. Right. Do we want this to be bigger? Maybe. Maybe. Let's do 1.2. Right. Now we've got... No, we're going to have to keep it at 1.1. Right. What I'd ideally then do is add obviously a frame to it and whatnot, but for now, we've got this. Right, so I think we're gonna leave it here. We've got a base, and then next week on Tuesday we'll continue refining this, and then yeah, that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and sitting through interesting time. We've had some problems, we've had things that went more smoothly, we've had a bit of everything today. But yeah, without further ado, bye guys.